2 is here, and so are we. Welcome back to episode 2 of the DFS Dudes, your home for daily fantasy football advice. We're your hosts, Jake Hart, Julian Sherman, right over there. I'm Sam Corcoran. Fellas, how are you doing on this fine Tuesday evening?
I'm doing pretty well. My week was pretty good. There's one lineup that I thought could do really well, but kind of collapsed. But our consensus lineup did well, which was cool. That was awesome.
Yeah, no, my individual lineup, I was kind of hoping we wouldn't have to run through that because it tanked pretty hard. But coming together, I'm surprised that our consensus did well, just because I got a little worried just because it's so like eclectic doing a consensus lineup together where you can't really do a lot of game stacks and stuff because people have such differing opinions. But it definitely, I mean, it came out really well.
Yeah. I mean, my personal lineup. So we'll start the recaps of the lineups right now. So I had Trevor Lawrence, Austin Eckler, Alvin Kamara, Marquise Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster, Jahan Dotson, Darren Waller, Pittman as a flex, and the Dolphins defense. And Pittman and the Dolphins defense obviously did well. Everyone else, Dotson did really well as a 3,400 player. Everyone else kind of sleeper, like they not a sleeper, I should say. That was the wrong word, but they kind of just had a sleepy week, I guess is what I was trying to say. Or you had Alvin Kamara who underperformed. Some players underperformed. So I made nothing off my lineup. A pretty mediocre week for me. I think I can do a lot better going forward, obviously.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my cash hit pretty easily. Well, for my cash, I had like Carr, Najee, McCaffrey, Marquise Brown, Dotson, Pittman popped off, and I also had Jefferson. So that basically, those two kind of just smashed my lineup. But the best one, well, actually the best one total was the ones we created. But mine, I went with like a Matt Ryan, Michael Pittman, Moelle Cox with Brandon Cook stack, which did well. But and I also had Jefferson in that one. But Najee, I paid up for Najee, who did not do well, and he got hurt. And my sleeper was kind of underowned guy was Miles Sanders, who was really close to popping off because there were 4 goal line opportunities, only scored once, and was 4 yards away from a 100-yard bonus. So that one was close, and it was up there in the top 5, top 10 for a while, but then ended up not doing too well. But in the end, I made some money, which is good.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even really want to mention my lineup. It scored less than 100 points. Elijah Mitchell getting hurt, Lions defense getting 0, Kyle Pitts got completely plastered. It was pretty brutal to watch, but I did have that Matt Ryan, Michael Pittman stack in a lot of places, and I really liked last week. And I feel like I didn't talk about it enough in the episode, but I had a lot of coverage of the Kelsey Mahomes just because I felt like you got so far ahead at those two positions and were almost guaranteed to hit. So I had a couple million maker lineups where it was them two and Jahan Dotson, and it basically didn't even matter who else you had in your lineup because they were going to be expensive enough to get at least around 10 points. But I mean, I had a lot of colds and it still cashed pretty easily because of how well they did at premium positions.
Yeah, absolutely. So Julian, out of all the individual lineups, I think he clearly had the best week out of all of this. He profited off of that where Jake and I didn't. But let's talk about the consensus lineup. Jake, you were the one that turned that in. How about you bring that up and tell how much we won?
Yeah, we finished 5,000th in the Millie Maker with that one, and we ended up with $30 for a $5 entry, which is a nice little ×6 profit. And I mean, what was really nice about it, I guess, is how many similar players we had to the Millie Maker lineup. I mean, looking at it right now, we both had Saquon Barkley, both had Pittman, both had Jefferson, both had Kelsey, and we even had Jahan Dotson, which was an upgrade off of the Millie Maker lineup that had Christian Kirk for more money and only a point or two more. It was just the big difference was not having Mahomes and not having the Steelers defense really hurt us. And I mean, that's you can see that the strategy each week, obviously it changes a bit. And this week it was Last week it was spending up at quarterback just because he did blow out that game. But again, like that's a tough thing to see where it was such a one-sided stack that you want with no one in Arizona really coming out and doing all that great. Because if Hollywood had done great, our lineup would have been more in the running, but he only had that one touchdown, which was kind of disappointing just because the whole Arizona offense was coming up empty.
Yeah. I mean, overall,
yeah. If you did you guys see the stat that was like the Chiefs had 66 offensive plays and 33 first downs or something?
I know it was the Chiefs
really
destroyed the Cardinals defense.
Like,
well, yeah, my opponent in season, Joel had Patrick Mahomes, which sucked. He put up 35 on me and I lost. That's great.
wow.
But no, yeah, Mahomes. I had one Mahomes lineup with Valdez Scantling and McCole Hardman, and that cash didn't do great, but did pretty well. So,
yeah, I mean, I think overall, I think the Mahomes pick would have been good. I think the thing with the Steelers defense is looking at the Bengals offense on paper, they're a good offense. Burrow had a really rough game. The pick 6 helped. So I think that's something that not many people would have predicted.
Yeah, but
obviously,
defense is such a crapshoot week 1. Like one pick 6 against a good offense, and then who would have thought?
It's a crapshoot every week. Like
33 points for the Detroit Lions. So it's like one punt return. That's why I think focusing on defense is like it's fine if you want to pay up for defense, but a lot of times it's just like even the Niners defense was really high owned. They didn't hit value, I don't think, and so.
This week I'm expecting to see, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think that, and like this is diving into it a bit, but the Bengals defense playing against Cooper Rush at 2.2, I think might be 40% owned. Like, yeah, I was gonna talk about that later on. Slam dunk that he is gonna throw one interception and probably get sacked 3 or 4 times with how that offensive line is faring. That I don't see how you can't really get away from it at that point. And it's just, it'll be interesting to see because you don't really like those 40-50% ownership weeks that we've seen in the past. I just remember Mike Davis after he was popping off and then all of a sudden struggled. And anyone who didn't have Mike Davis was looking like a mad genius because he was about 60% owned. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I mean, let's just dive into this week, starting with defense, I guess. I mean, we kind of talked about the Bengals D. If you don't want the Bengals D, I'm going to give you one more cheap one at the same price. How about the Jets D going up against Cleveland at 2,200 as well? I have the Bengals D on my roster, but looking at it, you can easily switch the Jets D if you want to go. It's going to be a bit more of a risk, but at the same time, if the Bengals D doesn't hit, then you're going to look like a genius for taking the Jets defense, in my opinion. I think you have to go cheap on defense this week. There are not many. Just looking at, we'll talk about the other positions more, but I think defense, I know we went with Lions last week, but this week I think there are more secure defenses in the 2,200, in the 20, like sub 2,500 range, such as the Bengals and the Jets, where I think you can make a profit off of both of those.
Yeah. I mean, I think those are going to be the 2 highest owned defenses on the slate anyway, because, I mean, Bengals going against Dallas, and then, yeah, I think that's just going to be massively owned. And, with defense, it's such a crapshoot that it's like, if you don't want to go there and you look at someone else, like, you look at, like, the Dolphins defense going against Baltimore. It looks pretty terrible, right? Nobody really wants that, but the Dolphins defense, they looked really good last week. I guess, it's Mac Jones. But for $100 more, nobody's going to be on them. And so if they somehow score a touchdown, right, get a couple fumble recoveries, and they score more, that's really good leverage on people that have the other defenses. So I think for tournaments, for cash, I wouldn't do that. But for tournaments, that's a way that you could go. And that's probably something that I'm going to do in a couple lineups. This is my thought process.
Jake, what you thinking about defense for this week? I mean, you already said the Bengals. Is that kind of your lock?
I think the Bengals, I mean, they've been locked into my lineups just because, especially how my defense basically has to do with how I like my roster construction on the week, and I find myself paying up a ton at some of these other positions, with the middle being such a kind of dead zone this week as I kind of see it.
I agree.
So I think spending up is kind of, I don't really know what to expect. I mean, if I was going to spend up, I like to do it all the way and maybe go with the Rams, who I think could end up with 5 or 6 sacks. But at the same time, you never know. Marcus Mariota is a fast guy. They have pretty good intermediate receivers with Pitts and Drake London there. Not like the fastest guys who are going to be running deep routes, but someone who will be open. I mean, I guess if you want to go slightly different, I would go with the Cardinals, just because the Raiders' offensive line, as you saw against the Chargers, is so bad, and Carr has zero feel for the pocket, as I can attest to as a Raiders fan. He'll just stand in there like a statue until he fumbles. So I think if you're looking for a solid 5 points, 5-6 points, they can get it done, but they're not going to shut out the Raiders offense. They're just too good for that with Adams, Waller, Renfro. And I mean, the run game was pretty decent as well.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. If you want something a bit safe, I guess Cardinals. I think the safest pick and the pick with the most upside and the best value pick is the Bengals. We'll talk about more about defense when we come to the consensus, but let's go back to the top. Let's start as we always will, usually most of the time, unless we were just talking about defense before then. So I thought that was the perfect segue. Let's talk quarterback. Who do you guys have? I'll start with Julian this time.
Yeah, so I mean, I think one of the obvious game is the Las Vegas versus Arizona, because I think that's the 2 highest projected by Vegas. They think, yeah, that's Las Vegas at 28.5 and Arizona at 23. And so I think a lot of people are going to be on that. And I think Detroit, Washington, going with Jared Goff, who's super cheap. And this is really just for tournaments. Because first of all, the spread is like less than 2 points, a little over 2 points. So I think it's going to be a close game. And so not one team is just going to run the ball out, which can happen to a lot of games if one team is projected high, but the other is projected not that well. And so I think going off of, I think Antonio Gibson and DeAndre Swift are both going to be really chalky, along with Jahan Dotson. So one way that I would think about constructing a tournament lineup that I think I'm actually pretty sure I'm going to do, I think I'm going to go Jared Goff as my quarterback with Amon-Ra, who I think is going to be high owned, but then also have TJ Hawkinson, and instead of bringing it back with either Gibson or Jahan Dotson, I bring back with Terry McLaurin, who's going to be really low owned, high upside. I think recency bias are going to be like, they'd much rather go Jahan Dotson, and I think for upside with Terry, the guy's a stud. So that's really the quarterback that I'm going after a lot is Jared Goff. And you could also go Carson Wentz in that game. And if you do want to go chalky, I would say Jared Goff or Derek Carr is good, and Matthew Stafford. Those are the 2 guys that I think if you want to pick up, those are the guys you get.
So I'm actually going to disagree with Stafford. I know that, and here's why. It's nothing to do with the matchup, but he straight up said after the game to Sean McVay, I can't throw. That concerns me a little bit. I would want to stay away from that. I think there are some better guys out there. And I'll talk about one right now. It's a chalky pick, but I'm doing a stack this week. And I'll tell you the players who I have with him. There are 2 of them, but Russell Wilson as the quarterback against the Houston Texans. I know the Broncos offense lost against the Seahawks, which is a bit concerning, but you saw flashes. Don't get me wrong. I saw flashes of what this Broncos offense, I should say, can be. At the beginning of the game, they looked really smooth. Their red zone execution was not great. That's one thing they have to work on. The Nathaniel Hackett, whatever that field goal was ridiculous. I think the Broncos offense could have taken them down the field and scored the game-winning touchdown. I like what I saw from Russell Wilson. I like what I saw with his weapons. We'll talk about 2 of them later on, but I'm going to start him at quarterback and go a stack this week with the Denver Broncos at the Houston Texans.
I can't go. No, I mean, Denver's projected 27.5, Houston projected 18.5. I think my worry really is you're paying, what is he, 7.2K, which is the third highest on the slate for a team, and it could be over at halftime, and they could just run the ball with Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams and just throw on third down. And for 7.2, the upside is just not there. Receivers, I can't go
I agree, Julian. I considered going Russ, but I like the guys that are in his range at quarterback way too much. And I watched that game too, and they ran the ball. They wanted to run the ball, and it was only when they were very down that they felt like they needed to go and pass the ball. And Russ didn't look all that good to me. He's one of the ones where I need to see it. I need to see it to believe it. And I know I'm gonna go. I might contrast myself with some of the other players that I said, because going up, I won't explain it too much because it's, again, pretty self-explanatory with how good they are. But Kyler at 7.5, Lamar at 7.4, I think you've got a really good chance for a shootout in both those games. Especially the Raiders and the Cardinals are fast-paced offenses that they're gonna score some points. And so right there, you're just hoping that you don't get too many James Conner rushing touchdowns, which is something I'll talk about a bit later, which is why I'm not going as much with Kyler. But the other two quarterbacks that I'm a little more excited about on the bottom is the other part of that Lamar Jackson Ravens game is Tua for the Dolphins. I mean, you saw he still put up a decent fantasy day with, I think he had 275 yards and a touchdown last game, and the Patriots offense was slow. Like that game was over in a hurry. And it was just these little passes to Waddle and Tyreek where either one of them can break it deep on like any given play. I mean, you saw the Waddle 40-yard touchdown. They're just so dynamic, and he's in such a position to succeed that I think at 5.6, the odds that he gets 3 passing touchdowns and 300 yards, and they passed it a lot. Like, I think Edmonds had 12 carries, and he had basically all the carries. I think Mostert had 5, and they passed the ball almost 35 times. So I really like him at 5.6. And the other one, again, this is a bit contrasting what I said earlier, but at 5.7, Trey Lance, just his rushing upside. And if you can get a bounce back game against a bad Seattle defense, I think that's really exciting. And now that they don't have Mitchell, maybe they're a little more hesitant to run the ball. And you could see some of those made famous by the Steelers a few years ago, the little toss pass where Debo just runs in front of him and gets him a free touchdown near the goal line. So, I mean, that's where I'm going. I tend to be liking Tua just because I think there is upside for a cheap price, but also a decent floor. Like, your lineup is not screwed if he has a bad game, because I still think that looks like 250 and 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the thing with the Niners is about Trey Lance is I don't think they're going to run the ball that much. Oh, sorry. No, I don't think. Let me rephrase. They're not worried to run the ball. Kyle Shanahan can work with a lot of running backs, and they run all the time. That is their primary offensive scheme. They run the ball. They're a run-first team. I think if you look at this team, I think Ty Davis Price is going to get a lot of reps. I know he was inactive this week, but in the Chicago game, I think a lot of those reps that Jeff Wilson Jr. got were tailor-made for Ty Davis Price. I also think that Deebo Samuel is going to get a lot of reps. He was honestly RB1 that game and against Chicago. And I think that's going to be the same until Elijah Mitchell comes back. We'll see what happens with that. But I think I like the rushing upside of Trey Lance. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And yeah, I think he could have a bounce back game. I just wanted to clarify on that reasoning because I think the 49ers
those are it's a legitimate concern that game against Seattle is going to be so slow paced with 2 rushing offenses that it's going to be like the, I guess, Miami New England game last week where it was just like, oh my God, like, please do something. Or like the Colts Texans. I know it's a little different because the Colts offense is so concentrated on Pittman and Taylor. They did end up having good fantasy weeks, but they both ran the ball. It was Burkhead and Pierce on one side and Taylor running it into the line on the other. And it was just the clock just kept melting.
Yeah. And I think, well, the thing with Trey Lance is, one, I think you could run him naked. Like, you don't have to pair him with a receiver because of the rushing upside. So that's one thing you could do. And yeah, you could. They're 10-point favorites, so I do worry about running the ball. But Trey Lance, if there's one quarterback that can overcome that 10-point differential, it is Trey Lance because of the rushing upside. He has such a high floor. Doesn't matter who he's playing or the spread. He's going to have a high floor. And last week, I think recency bias is a hell of a thing, right? He's going against Chicago. Not a great game, but they're basically playing in mud. And this is his first start. So I would say that Trey Lance is a little risky, and I probably wouldn't go that way, but I could see why you would want to go Trey Lance. Like, I don't have a massive problem with it. It's just not so on target.
Fair enough. I think also other quarterbacks. I do like Derek Carr a lot. That's another guy I was going to talk about. You could go back with Matt Ryan, go back with the Pittman Ryan stack. I think there's other guys I like Tua a lot more, who's at 5,600, I believe, and Matt Ryan's 5,500. I'd much rather take Tua over Matt Ryan for $100 extra. And Joe Burrow, honestly, I know like the Bengals have a very high powered offense going against a Cowboys defense. I know it's not going to be really a shootout. I like Carr a bit more at 6,600. Like Carr 6,200, Burrow 66. I'd rather take Carr, but just another guy to throw out there.
I don't know about Burrow. I think they're going to be up and they're going to run the
Burrow's
ball.
like my fourth option.
Higgins
Just
kind
an
of
FYI.
injured.
My problem with all those stacks that you said is, again, like if you want to pair them, it's so expensive. Like doing a Burrow Chase stack you are blowing your whole lineup up. If you're doing, even that Pittman is priced. I mean, we got so excited about him because he was at 5,500 last week, but now he's at 6,800, and even in a really good matchup, it's hard to get as excited about him when he's now priced in the same range as like a Tyreek Hill and somewhat close to a Deebo Samuel, guys where you like if he scores 10, like if Pittman scores 10 points, it's kind of okay, like par for the course. But if Deebo puts up only 10 points again, like you're like, what the hell happened? I just feel like he's less assured of having a really good week just with how their offense is run.
All right.
Yeah, fair enough. Exactly. Let's move on to running back. I think we've talked a lot about quarterbacks, and I want to start with running back because you guys were like, oh, I disagree with Russell Wilson because the Broncos run the ball a lot. Guess how many targets Javonte Williams got?
11.
You don't know? It was 12. So close enough. I think that really excites me. So running back one is going to be Javonte Williams. I think with the targets, if they're up big against the Texans, they'll probably be trying to run it out with him. He'll get some carries. They seem to go to him way more than Gordon. So it seems like it's going to be a workhorse system where Javonte, at only 6,500, I think it's only going up from there. So might as well get that value in while you can. If he's going to get targeted by Wilson a lot like he did week one, that's why I also have Wilson in that lineup. But if Wilson doesn't target him, you're going to get some carries for Javonte. So
okay, pause. Javonte is not a workhorse. He's splitting carries with Melvin.
He got out carried by Melvin Gordon by 5 carries.
Javonte seemed like he was in on way more snaps from what I watched.
Yeah, he might have been on more snaps, but he's not a workhorse like Leonard Fournette or Saquon Barkley or something. Like a workhorse is like David Montgomery is more of a workhorse than Javonte Williams.
I guess I should clarify that. No, I guess I should clarify that. I mean, he's obviously splitting a backfield, but I think he's on the track to be a workhorse is what I should say.
I understand where you're trying to go, but he's not a workhorse. All right. Do you have any more running backs or?
Yeah, I was gonna continue, but I just want to bring up that Javonte point. RB2, and this isn't if he's healthy. Najee Harris. I think at 6,200, that's fairly low for a guy like Najee Harris going against the Patriots, who let's be real, they didn't have the best week last week on defense. I think Steelers will probably run the ball. Najee can get some targets if need be. He'd obviously this again if he's healthy. It seems like he's playing at the moment, so I'm gonna go with him. I would not go after who's their backup, Jalen Warren. He's at 5,400. There's a guy below that I like a bit more if Najee's out, and that's going to be Breece Hall. I know like Michael Carter got the majority of the carries, but Breece Hall, 10 targets against the Browns. That could be a back and forth game. I think if they're going to throw the ball, if they want to throw some checkdowns, Joe Flacco, I mean, let's be real. He's not throwing the ball deep. It's going to be some checkdowns. I think Breece Hall could get a lot of targets at only 5,200, way lower than what he was at last week. I think that's pretty solid value right there if you want to go cheap. The other guy, I'll just mention him. I'm not really excited about him, but if you want someone in the middle of that range, I think your best bet would be Darrell Henderson against Atlanta. And the reason I'm only saying that, I mean, he had a good week 1. He got the majority of the carries, but you also have Cam Akers. You don't know what he's going to do. And who's their other guy? They have another guy, not Cam Akers. That I want to. Never mind. Okay, whatever. He's not a workhorse. It's a risky pick, but if you want someone in the middle, 5,700, I think is a reasonable price for that. Going up against Atlanta, I think the only reason I'm having him is I don't have him on my roster, but if you want someone in the middle of that, somewhere between 62 and 5,200, then I think you go with Darrell Henderson.
I can't go with Darrell. I mean, he's going to be stupid high owned, and it's just not going to make any sense in a tournament lineup to go with someone that's you have no idea what he's going to be.
They passed a cup on the goal line so much.
It's like when I had Aaron Jones, they just run a slant route to Devontae Adams at the 1. It's like I wouldn't. I was against Jake. I wouldn't go Darrell Henderson just because he's so high owned right there at 5,700. But I mean, you could, but I wouldn't do that in a tournament. And so for me, the guy that I'm thinking of is, first of all, one of the high priced guys that I'm going with is Alvin Kamara. And I think you look at Saquon Barkley at $100 less than him, and clearly Saquon is the better play, right? But everyone is going to say Saquon's the better play. So I think, once again, recency bias. It's week 1. Alvin Kamara didn't do well. Saquon did do well. Alvin Kamara doesn't have a great matchup. Saquon does. And so I'm not saying probably if you run a simulation a million times, Saquon is the better pick. But if you do get it right with Alvin Kamara and the field goes Saquon, that's how you shoot up leaderboards. And that's why I'm going with Alvin Kamara right there. You can't go Saquon. There's no problem with that. Another guy that I'm going is I'm looking at that Las Vegas versus Arizona game, and I'm going Connor and Jacobs as my 2 because I think they're going to get the passing attack. I think Carr's going to be high owned. Devontae Adams, Marquise Brown again, Kyler, and I think Josh Jacobs had a poor game last week. He's going to get overlooked again he's a workhorse. And I think James Conner, again, is another guy that I'm going for. So those are 2 low-owned guys that I think can really do well for you. And I think, obviously, when you look at Javonte Williams, you touched on that a little bit. I would rather go Najee at 6,200, a little bit less, and I think Javonte Williams will be higher owned, and so I'm agreeing with you on that Najee point. And so those are the running backs that I'm targeting. And then if you want to save salary, Jeff Wilson Jr. is a guy going against Seattle, cheap. That's someone that you could go with. That's my salary shit, really.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the Connor point, he's going to be my highest owned running back this week. Just 6,900 for a guy who, I mean, gets a ton of catches, is on the field all the time against a Raiders team that doesn't deal well with the running back in the passing game. And I think if he gets a touchdown this week, which I don't think he got one last week, he could easily. I think
he did. Sure he did. Yeah.
He got one, but like, if he gets five catches, a touchdown, and like 60 rushing yards, that is what I see like as his projection this week, and that's pretty solid for a guy below 7K. Going back to your point, Sam, about Breece Hall, I don't really get Breece Hall over Carter. I think Carter was on the field way more, and he got more touches. And I mean, I get that Breece Hall had 10 targets, but Michael Carter had 9. So it's like, I don't know. Like, I feel like you're going either way. And just Breece Hall has more. I
think my other thing is that Michael Carter is going to be more owned if they use Breece Hall more for 5,200. I think that's if Breece Hall is going to get the majority of the points, which I think is a real possibility. and you take him over Michael Carter, then you're gonna profit off of that. Whereas in Michael Carter, I think he's gonna be pretty high owned at 5,200, and people, if he does well, then everyone else is gonna do well too. Is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're overestimating how much a Jets running back, how highly he's going to be owned. I get that people are excited about his week 1, but just at where he's priced, I think there are other options. But okay. And then another guy, the other guys I like are pretty, I mean, I won't go super deep into the high guys, but I mean, if you're going to go Taylor, CMC, those are great plays this week. I think it's just there's such a gap in the rest of the field, I still believe, even though CMC had a slightly down week 1. And then, but I prefer Mixon at 7.2. I think they're going to be winning by a lot. That Cowboys D line is just not, I mean, you saw Fournette absolutely tear it to shreds, and they're built for speed. They're built for pass rush. They're not built for a consistent rushing attack that the Bengals time and time again show that they're willing to do with Mixon. I believe that he will be high owned, so you'll have to get away with it. Get away from that in the rest of the lineup. But I think he's guaranteed to have a pretty solid game. He's not going to have the whatever 7 catches that he had last week, just because I don't think Burrow will be under that kind of duress, or they won't be passing that much. But I think he's definitely a really solid option. And then a bit of a different play, I really like Chase Edmonds at 5.2. I think that game is going to be high scoring. I think you could see him get a lot of catches. Like I said earlier, he did dominate the work in that backfield. He got only 12 attempts, but he had 4 targets, 4 catches, 40 yards. And I think, I mean, he had 16 touches in that slow, low scoring game against New England. So I think if he happens to get into the end zone and gets 4 or 5 catches again, I think you're looking at a really solid 20-25 point running back that you can throw into your flex or your RB2 that allows you to go big at receiver, which I have a lot of guys that I like up there at receiver, tight end, quarterback. I think it allows you to stay out of the middle of those other positions.
Yeah, I actually think Mixon could be a very good play this week, especially going against, again, you said the D line of the Cowboys, it's really not that great. So I think that could be a good play. And honestly, Edmonds, I think it's solid. Again, I think I'd still go either Hall or Carter over him. I just like their upside a bit more with target wise, I think. So I would take Hall and Carter over Edmonds, but if you want to go Edmonds, if you're on that track, I don't see a problem with it.
Yeah, for Edmonds, I would rather go. I mean, you look at Edmonds at 5,200. I think that is a great value, and you go up to 5,600 at James Robinson, and I think he's going to be. I think the median projection with him and Chase Edmonds is going to be pretty similar, right, in the end. But I think that the ownership is going to be a lot lower, and it will make up for the 400. So I'm not saying that you can't go Edmonds, but I think that's someone, if you do have a really chalky team, that's somewhere you could go, is just go 400.
I mean, I think I don't know what he was last week, but I mean, when I was looking at it, I know Connor was around 4% last week, and I think Edmonds is gonna be around that, definitely sub 10. I don't see how, with where he's priced right next to, like you said, Sam, Carter and Brees, who are going to be, I mean, after having those massive target numbers, I think I don't see him being, I'll check what he is next week when you guys talk about wide receivers, but I don't see him being that highly owned with what the slate looks like this week.
Fair enough. Yeah, let's move on to wide receiver. I guess I'll start. So this one, I think I don't know what their ownership. I didn't really consider ownership for these wide receivers. I kind of just looked at targets from the previous week, and I kind of just thought to myself, who can I
4%.
afford?
Chase Edmonds was 4%.
4%. Okay, so yeah, you hit the nail on the head right there. But yeah, so for wide receiver, I kind of just looked at who was targeted, who can I afford? Because I already went big on quarterback. I went somewhat big on running back. So now I have 4 wide receiver spots. My flex is a wide receiver, where I just wanted the guys who could get all targets. And spoiler alert, to do this, I went cheap on tight end. We'll talk about it later. But I went with 4 guys who were in the top, who are somewhere on the top of the list in targets from last week. Michael Pittman, Deontay Johnson, Christian Kirk, Brandon Cooks. All very solid matchups going up against defenses that don't necessarily have that star power that you're looking at. Pittman against Jacksonville, Kirk against Indy. I mean, I know that the Colts will probably win that game, and the Colts defense is not as bad, but I think Jacksonville, they're going to have to throw the ball. Christian Kirk last week, what did he get? 12 targets. Had a very solid week. Didn't reach the end zone. He got 17 points. So I think the upside for Christian Kirk is looking very good right there. Michael Pittman, again, he had a really good week. He's at 6,700, one of the more high-end receivers. You could go Amon St. Brown a bit cheaper, but I'm going to go Pittman. I just like where he's at a bit more. Going up against Jacksonville, I think that's a bit of a better matchup too. Then you got Deontay Johnson, 5,800 against New England. The Steelers targeted him a lot. I think it was 12 times as well. So all these guys, Pittman 13, Deontay 12, Kirk 12, Cooks 12. So everyone has 12 targets at least. And Brandon Cooks against Denver, they're going to be throwing the ball a lot. I know Denver can be a tough matchup, and I really tried to get Amon-Ra in this lineup. That was the guy I really wanted to have in this lineup, but I took those 4 over. I like their matchups. I like where their situation's at a little bit more, and I also had to play the money game a little bit. So those are my 4 receivers, really going off of targets. If you really want a sleeper, Robbie Anderson at 1,500. He got 8 targets, played every single snap last week for the Carolina Panthers. 100%. So did DJ Moore. DJ Moore is a bit more expensive at 5,700. Robbie Anderson got a bit more targets, if I'm not wrong. So I would say Robbie Anderson at 5,300 is a really good value pick for the week.
Yeah, I like that. I think for me, one of the main guys that I think Terry McLaurin. I think that game, really in general, because you look at what he's surrounded by. 100 up, you get Pittman. Everyone loves Pittman. Down, Amon-Ra, and right in between is Terry. And I think going against Detroit, the matchups, A.J. Brown torched them last week. And I think a lot of people are going to rather go either up $100 or down $100. And I know for me, if I'm playing cash, I'm definitely not playing Terry McLaurin. If we're taking a tournament look at it, I mean, you talked about some of the guys that I was going to talk about, but going with Terry, I think there's so much upside with him, and it's 1 week, and people are going to be like, oh, Jahan Dotson's the wide receiver 1 there. Don't go Terry. Well, I think Terry McLaurin's going to be okay this year. And especially this week, when you consider he's probably going to be like sub 5% ownership when you look at where he's at. And so that's why one of the guys that I'm going with is Terry McLaurin. And I'm also going to go with DK Metcalf, who's 100 over Marquise Brown. So I think Marquise Brown can eat a lot of the ownership right there. And I think you go up 100, you got DK Metcalf. High upside guy. I mean, I know the Niners defense is good, but a lot of people are going to say, I don't want DK Metcalf with Geno Smith going against a good defense. But DK Metcalf's a freak athlete, and I think at his ownership, his upside in the tournament is pretty darn high. The guy's he's a stud. And if I'm going to go up, I think, first of all, Jamar Chase is someone that is at 8K is really high priced, but I think he's not going to get as much ownership as people would think. I think Chase and Tyreek Hill at 8,000 and 7,100 are both solid picks because, you look at guys lower, they're going to be really chalky like Mike Evans, Michael Pittman, Amon-Ra. Those are guys that people are going to go there, I think, for wide receiver. And Jamar Chase is going to get overlooked, especially with a kind of battered up T. Higgins. I don't know where he's at. And I think that people are going to be worried because they're going to think that, Cincinnati's going to be down. They're going to run the ball a lot. Which is probably true, but Jamar Chase gets a couple massive receptions. He makes it up. You saw what he did last week. I mean, the guy's a stud. Yeah. He's just stupid good, and it's a high price, and I think that's going to turn a lot of people off. And he hits. He could easily get 25, 26 points, gets a couple touchdowns, 100 yards, 7 receptions at sub 10% ownership and maybe 6 or 7% ownership, that's something I'm going with. So those are my wide receivers.
Yeah, and I just want to touch on, you touched on Chase and Hill. The guy in between, Deebo Samuel, he's going to get the ball a lot, especially with Elijah Mitchell out, both in the run game and the pass game. I think if the Niners are in the red zone, I would be shocked if they don't give the ball to Deebo Samuel at least twice on their red zone drive. If they don't convert, if let's say they go all 4 downs, they're going to be looking at Deebo Samuel at least twice in the red zone plays. So I think at 7,800, if you want to go up, that's a fantastic play. And I think ownership is going to be a bit less because I think you look at the receiver. When you think receiver, you think of the guy who catches the ball. But I think people forget, like, Deebo Samuel runs the ball a lot. And I mean, I know he's known as the wide back, but when making a fantasy team, people are looking at receptions. But Deebo Samuel is going to get the ball a lot, especially with Elijah Mitchell out.
Yeah, and I do agree. I mean, he's the 4th highest priced receiver on the slate. He probably should not be priced that high. He shouldn't be priced that high, and I think that's going to turn a lot of people off. And so that's why I like the pick. I think there's a lot of upside with him. No, it was 1 week. There was basically a storm. Trey Lance's first start, not a great place to start first. And I think Deebo Samuel has touchdown upside, touchdown equity for sure. They give the ball to him in the red zone a lot. And he's also an amazing player. And I think Kyle Shanahan's going to want to get him the ball as much as possible. And so, yeah, especially with the banged-up Kittle, he's going to get a lot of receptions. People are going to overlook Deebo. For tournaments, I love that pick.
Yeah, I mean, going back a bit, and I meant to say this for the Najee pick, but it still stands with the Deontay Johnson. I mean, that game is one that I'm just avoiding it. I'm so scared that teams are going to get to run like 40 plays a piece because it's going to be so slow paced. I mean, you're talking about teams that are willing to just run it into the line over and over again, and someone's going to win 10-9. Like it's just that terrifies me. And if Najee doesn't get that one touchdown on that one drive, or if Deontay Johnson doesn't get that I guess big play that he would need to break it out, I don't think that makes it worth it, especially with, I mean, how expensive and how many options there are around him. I mean, you're talking about Deontay Johnson at 5,800, right next to Cortland Sutton at 6,100, right next to Hollywood Brown at 62, and DJ Moore at 5.7. I think those are all different options that I like a little bit more. But again, like the top receivers, like everyone else on this slate, there's really nowhere you can go wrong. Kupp, Adams, Chase, Deebo, I think are all really solid picks if you have the money for them. I think my favorite, again, mentioning the Tua stack, I think Tyreek Hill is a smash play this week. I mean, in that slow paced game, he still had like 10 targets, and he's so electric that any one of them could go for a touchdown at any time. And this is not a great Baltimore secondary, especially, I mean, if freaking Kyle Hamilton's out there getting switched on to Tyreek Hill, good luck. And then, I mean, I don't hate Waddle, but with him being only 700 less than Tyreek Hill, I don't really see that as being worth it. I think that Tyreek Hill is the alpha. And even though Waddle could, I mean, again, like maybe you get away from the high priced ownership that I think Tyreek could have this week, and go Waddle. But at some point you need to take the points that are there, and not stop worrying about ownership. After that, looking down the list, other people mentioned these, so I'm not going to go into depth, but Sutton, if that Broncos offense gets clicking, I think that he is the alpha receiver. And I know Judy had a better week 1, but I saw a lot of deep shots to Sutton where in the end zone, where if he hits on 1 or 2 of those, you could see him have a crazy week. Hollywood Brown, same reasons as last week. He's the alpha receiver. If this Cardinals offense can get going a little more than they did last week, which I think they should have a much easier time against a Raiders defense, he could be solid. Looking down, I do have some solid options. Curtis Samuel, not Deebo Samuel. He's going to be super high owned, but I mean, if you're looking in that range, that is really solid. And right next to him, a guy who, and I wrote this down just because I was looking at the Deontay Johnson and all those targets that he got. But something that surprised me was Chase Claypool and his usage in the run game. He only got four catches on 6 targets for 18 yards, but he had 6 rushing attempts for 36 yards and a few in the red zone too. So if that game is slow paced, he could be a guy who steals that touchdown away, gets 5 or 6 catches, and adds a couple. I mean, he's almost like a mini Debo, where at 4.7, I feel like you're much safer at playing that upside than going up with a Deontay Johnson.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I actually
like
never really.
Courtland Sutton pick. All right, you go.
Yeah,
ahead,
I
Zane.
think Sutton is the alpha in Denver, and I like Judy too, but I think Sutton's going to be. It's going to be similar to a T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, where I think not exactly in that way, but I think by the end of the season you'll see Courtland Sutton as wide receiver 1 and by far wide receiver 1, and Judy will be wide receiver.
You can easily compare it to the DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. Courtland Sutton is the alpha, and there will be games where Jerry Jeudy gets more catches, more targets. He's a very explosive, athletic guy, but he doesn't provide what Courtland Sutton does in the red zone and as that alpha receiver. And then way down again, like this is you're desperate. I love my lineup, but I only have 3,000 to spend. Noah Brown at 3.8. When Cooper Rush came in the game, he was looking his way. I understand they were down a lot and they were passing, and he was probably just wide open because the Bucs were playing cover 3 or something like that. But he's a pivot option where no one's gonna pick him.
For sure.
He's going to be super low owned. And then Greg Dortch, I think he had something crazy like 9 targets for the Cardinals, 3.5K. If Rondale Moore is out again, this is big. If Rondale Moore is in, do not play him. He probably won't even see the field.
Yes.
But he had a crazy high, and for 3,500, it's kind of a why not pick.
Yeah. And I think
if you need
that's true. But no, for sure. I think going back to the Courtland Sutton thing, but I think it's just a good idea in general if you see someone like Courtland Sutton. So he's at 6,100. You got Marquise Brown at 66.2 and Brandon Cooks at 6,000. And right in between them, right, is Courtland Sutton. So I think he's going to go overlooked a lot in tournaments because people are going to go, I want Marquise Brown. He's the alpha. I want Brandon Cooks. He's the alpha. He did well last week. Courtland Sutton is the alpha. Russell Wilson didn't look that good last week. Jerry Jeudy got a massive touchdown. Oh, they're running the ball a lot. And I think that's something where Sutton in the end, actually, he was getting a lot of deep targets, which was great. Back to your point. And so I think that's just in general, if you're going to look for value on, not just value, but leverage on other people's thoughts, I would say that Courtland Sutton is such a good example of that. I got 2 alphas in between alphas, right above and right below him. And in between is Courtland Sutton, who's got Russell Wilson throwing in the ball. It was one game. The recency bias is crazy. People are not going to want to go to the Broncos. And so, I didn't really talk about him, but that's someone that I'm going to get in my lineup a good amount. That's for sure. That's someone that I like.
100%. Let's move on to tight end. We've talked a lot about receivers, and I bet we'll talk more during the consensus pick. Jake, I'll start with you for tight end. Who's your tight end this week?
My tight end that I'm looking at, and I'm someone who it's top or bottom. If I really like someone at the top, like I do this week, I'm going to take him. Mark Andrews, 6.4K. We hit on Kelsey at the top last week, and I think it's a very similar situation where I love this Dolphins-Ravens game, and it may seem like a why, but I really watching these two offenses in week 1, I really think it's going to be a high-scoring shootout game that has a lot of really talented players that are just really nicely priced. So I think getting Mark Andrews and being able to set the tone with probably like a 20-point week at tight end is all you're looking for. I mean, that's really helpful. I think there are good options. Waller still 5.6. If he catches a touchdown, he's paying off. Ertz at 4.5. He'll see some targets. And then I do like Logan Thomas at 3.4, which I found myself pivoting to if I'm going to go super cheap. But basically, like I said, it's top or bottom. So for me, I find myself Logan Thomas. And if I have that extra 3K to spend, Mark Andrews.
Yeah. One of the games that I like, and I already said it, and it's kind of weird to say that I like it. And this is just a tournament perspective. I'm going TJ Hawkinson because I think he's going to be relatively low owned. He's at 4,700, which is, pretty cheap considering I think he's going to get a good amount of targets. It's not like a screaming value, but I think he's obviously not going to be that high owned because nobody really likes Jared Goff. DeAndre Swift is going to be high owned, so if you're having Swift, you're really not going to want Hawkinson in your lineup. So I think Hawkinson is someone that's solid. Albert O, again, he's at 3.7K. He's going to be high owned. People liked him last week. And if you want to eat that ownership, he's a great value, right? It's just someone that you see, you're like, Albert O at 3.7K, okay, I can get on board with that. And those really are my two main guys. And I think you could go down to Pitts. I think Pitts is a good play because I think the guys, I don't know, I would say he's the alpha receiver. And he had a poor week last week, but he's still a really good player. And I think that Kyle Pitts is just a freak athlete. People are going to look at his game log and say week 1 he wasn't that good. Okay, it's 1 week and it's week 1. Don't overreact. So those are my 3 guys. I would say Hawkinson, Alberto, and Pitts. The tight ends that I like.
Yeah, I went Albert O solely because I really went top heavy earlier on, and you kind of got to compensate for that. So I went Albert O. Definitely probably my favorite low end tight end. If I want to go high end, I would aim to go Andrews. I think, Jake, I completely agree with you. We hit on Kelsey last week. I think you can hit on Andrews again. I think, honestly, like 20 points, like that's not going to be surprising if he hits 20 points. And I think you're definitely going to see somewhere over 15. I think he'll get something in the red zone going for him. But yeah, I think Mark Andrews if you go high and Alberto if you go low. So with that in mind, let's do our weekly consensus lineup right here. So I have DraftKings up. We'll start with quarterback. And the one guy, I mean, I kind of got the sense that you guys are looking for a more low-end quarterback. Am I correct?
I mean, I think I was going in all my lineups. I've gone either Tua or like top tier Lamar and Kyler. So I'm not super convicted on any of them. So whatever you guys are feeling.
I think we have to think if we're going to go with a quarterback is like, do we like that game and do we have receivers that we can pair with him? And I think for me, the guy that I like, and you guys probably, I like Jared Goff, and I know it kind of sucks, but the reason I like him is I like Terry McLaurin, and I think it's a good pivot off DeAndre Swift. And I also like DJ Hawkinson. So if I'm thinking, I think Amon-Ra is going to be high owned. And so if we choose to go Jared Goff, this is my thought process on Goff is I'm going to go Goff. He's going to be low owned. So that means that I can skip that Swift. I'm going to get leverage on that Swift ownership. I'll go Amon-Ra. I'll eat the chalk with Amon-Ra. Go Hawkinson. And instead of bringing it back, I think a lot of people would either go Gibson or Jahan Dotson. I'm going to go Terry McLaurin as my bring back because I think that he's going to be low owned and he's still a guy with such high upside. So that's my thought process for the lineup, and that's where I would go with if we do go Jared Goff. But a lot of that, you guys probably might not like that pick, and it's okay.
My issue with that is just they run the ball so much in the red zone. They have zero faith in Jared Goff's ability to punch it in. And so that limits the ceiling to me. I mean, what we saw, Swift had 1 touchdown and Jamal Williams had 2.
But that's like a sample size of like 1 game.
No, I understand, but I mean it's not. I don't know. I mean I can look it up, but I just don't. Jared Goff in the past, as he had the monster games in Detroit that I think there are other quarterbacks that are capable of putting together much bigger games, but I get it, at 5,400 he is a big value.
It's not anyone that I think, we have to go Jared Goff. Of course, you should never say I have to go Jared Goff on a slate. But I think that's just someone that I like. And the other guy, Derek Carr. But Jake, you go ahead with whatever quarterback you want.
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning more on Jake's side. I think Tua is the best option here. For high end, I mean, I still would go Russell Wilson over Kyler Murray and Lamar Jackson. But I do see your point about Lamar Jackson. That could be a shootout game. So let's go with the other quarterback at 5,600 and Tua Tagovailoa. Is everyone cool with that?
Sure.
Perfect. We'll go Tua and then running back. Let's move on to running back. I think Javonte is my favorite player this week. I would definitely want Javonte in this lineup. What are your guys' thoughts on Javonte being in this lineup?
Yeah, I think we could go Javonte. I think, what is he, 6,500? He's going to be
6,500,
high owned. Yeah. I think my personal pick, I think we go Josh Jacobs or James Conner as one of our running backs because they're going to be really low owned. They're both workhorses. And they could bust pretty easily, but if they do hit like Miles Sanders, last week had 18.5, that's not massive, and he could have had much more than that. And so I think that's someone that I would go as one of our running backs, either James Conner or Josh Jacobs. And I think
I love James Conner is the only. I found that I like when I'm doing these lineups, I'm super wishy-washy on the running backs this week, but James Conner is the one that's pretty consistently been in my lineups. I said the same thing about Aaron Jones last week, though. So
if you guys want, if you guys are both sold on James Conner, I say we'll add him as number one.
And then about Jacobs, I don't know. I mean, Brandon Bolden was on the field a lot and essentially all the passing downs. And I would love if they use Jacobs more because I think if they do run the ball in, it's going to be him. So you could see him come out randomly with 2 touchdowns. But outside of that, I don't see him getting like a massive carry. Like I think 14 carries is probably around his ceiling and like 2 or 3 catches, which it limits that upside that I think you could see with a guy like Conner. And again, you're spending up to get it, but
no, I agree with that. I think especially if we're going Tua at quarterback, like we already got a low-owned guy. We don't need another really low-owned guy who doesn't project super well, right? And so I agree with if we had gone really chalky quarterback and then chalky wide receiver, I would have said Jacobs. That's a play you probably should get, but here with Tua and Conner, yeah, we don't need Jacobs. For sure.
Yeah, I think James Conner. I think you pick one of those guys, and I like James Conner a little bit better. I know it's a bit more high end, but I think he's going to get more run opportunities, more targets in the game. Before I forget, let's go. Before we pick RB2, I think we all kind of were sold on the Bengals. Are we cool putting that in?
I'm good with that.
All right, perfect. That's what I was thinking that put that in. That makes it a bit easier.
Oh, you want to put in the Bengals defense right now? Oh, okay. Oh.
Yeah. I was just saying like it's gonna make it easier to figure out because I have a bad feeling we'll just get through everything and be like, oh wait, we need to cut some budget here.
But the Bengals defense are gonna be like a quarter of the teams are gonna have the Bengals defense. Is that really
at
the
least
you want to have? I mean, it's such a crapshoot. If he's 25% owned, I mean, what's the chance that he's
I mean,
the best
like
value?
I said, the only other one I had any conviction in was the Cardinals. But again, like if you guys, as long as we're not spending 4,000 or pretty much above like 3,000, I'm fine with any of the defenses.
I think that Bengals defense is going to be like 23% owned, and they're not going to be the top value 23% of the time. That's ridiculous. The math just isn't there. I think we fade Bengals defense. I
would go Jets. If we want to fade Bengals, I'd go Jets.
That's someone that I would. Yeah, you could do Jets. Yeah.
All right. Is everyone cool with Jets?
Yeah. I don't. Defense is somewhere where you saw my strategy last week. I really don't care. Like,
but I mean,
I threw the Lions in there.
Defense that fits at the end. But okay, if you guys want to go Jets and build a roster,
I think we can get some defense now and figure it out later, just in case, just to have that like a placeholder right there. Because I don't want to go through all the guys and then not be able to afford any defense.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, let's go back to running back. What's RB2 for you guys? Let's figure that out. I'm still sold on Javonte, but I'm willing to. Yeah, I think Najee's still good. As I said, other guys include Breece Hall if you want to go somewhat cheap. Chase Edmonds, Michael Carter could go one of those guys.
Yeah, I think I mean, I like Najee a lot. I know he's less than Connor, and I think Najee coming off an injury. He said he's ready to go, but I don't know. Najee could be someone that we could go with if we don't want to go like super high. Like Leonard Fournette is obviously just a really good play, and Saquon Barkley is another great play. And so we could go Lenny or Saquon if you want to eat some chalk a little bit, eat some ownership, and go low on somewhere else because we are going Tua, which is a low on quarterback. I don't know what do you guys think.
Yeah, we aren't going
think
chalk
for
on
me, I'm all over the place with what price I guess I want to go with for my RB2. Because I like, again, I have the guys I've written down. It's like, yeah, Mixon, Fournette, Barkley, but also the Jets running backs, Edmonds, Jeff Wilson Jr. So I mean, for me, I would pick some wideouts first, and then we can come like revisit it just because I'm so undefined. But if you want to put like Najee or something in there, I don't really care.
I mean, it depends. Well, we have to plan out. Like, do we want to go high? If we are going to go expensive wide receivers, then which I don't know if we really. I think we could, but I think if we are going to go expensive wide receivers, we're gonna have to go a cheap RB2. Especially if you guys want to get Mark Andrews in your tight end spot. I don't know if you do or not. Especially with the bring back with the
Yeah,
Baltimore.
we're gonna have to go cheap somewhere if we want to go. We'd either have to go Alberto at tight end or someone cheap, or you're gonna have to go cheap somewhere else.
I mean, we have a pretty cheap quarterback, but
we do. I think running back is not the best place to go cheap at the moment. So I would still stick to some of the higher end. I like your pick in Najee, Julian, if you wanted to do that.
I mean, I think Najee could be a good pick. I think Saquon's just gonna be he's a really good play, but he's gonna be really high owned. And so I think you could go Saquon, but at 6,700, I'd probably rather go Leonard Fournette if we are gonna get someone. But I don't know. Those are two high price.
I like all those are easy.
Okay. I say I think Leonard Fournette. Either Leonard Fournette or Najee, I think, are the best guys. And I say we go Leonard Fournette just in case Najee gets hurt. And I'm only saying that for the sake of the viewers because we're giving a lineup now. This is going on air. I think we just give for the sake of the viewers, we go Leonard Fournette considering that Najee Harris may not play this week.
All right.
Perfect. All right, we'll do that. Do we want to put I'm skipping a tight end just because I know that we've talked about Mark Andrews. Do we want to just put that in now and figure out receiver, try to get some cheap guy, go a little bit cheap at receiver, or do we want to figure this out a bit more at receiver?
I think wide receiver for me, I think the play is we go Tyreek Hill, and I think that could be someone that could be a good play. And I don't know if you guys agree with this, but if we want to go Tyreek Hill to pair with Tua, and then we could also go Chase Edmonds if they're going to pass the ball. Chase Edmonds is a running back that would get a lot of receptions. And I know you think it might be a little negative correlation, but Edmonds, if they're down, could still get a lot of receptions. And I think that's someone that maybe we could go with if you want to pair him with Tua. But I don't know if you guys really want to do that. And I can see why you wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah, I mean, this is shaping up very similar to my. I mean, obviously we're doing the same stack that I had in my lineup, but I had the Tua, Tyreek, and Chedmans with the Andrews bring back. I think I really like that, especially if my conviction is that it's going to be around a 60-point over/under game, which is obviously crazy high, and I wouldn't put any money on that outside of my DraftKings lineup. But I think, I mean, obviously with the Millie Maker, you're picturing some fantasy and hoping that it would come true. And I think that could be really solid.
Yeah. I think I personally, for me, I think Edmonds is, I honestly think Edmonds would be solid considering that we need to save a bit of money. I would be down putting him as a flex. But yeah.
Yeah, I think we go Edmonds and Tyreek. And then,
okay.
Yeah, like what money? How much money would we be at then?
So yeah, well, let's put that in.
Just-
So Edmonds as a flex, wide receiver, you're going with Tyreek Hill. That's an average player of 50. That's 5,400. So you need to go. So we got 2 receivers left. You need to go really cheap somewhere. Whether it be what I want to just, I'm just going to tight end. What if we put Albert Owen? What does that look like for us? That puts us our average play. We can get 2,6,300 guys, or we can get somewhere in like the 3,500 range. Some guy who is Noah Brown, I guess. If you want to go in 3,800, get someone like Andrews in at tight end. I think that's our best bet right now. If we go Albert O and go 2 receivers in the 6K range, or we go Mark Andrews and Noah Brown and then get someone else to fill that spot.
I like Mark Andrews Mark Andrews as a bring back, because who else do you really want in Baltimore?
Yeah.
And I think Mark Andrews is probably the guy.
That's what I was gonna say. I mean, Bateman at 5,500 doesn't suck, but I just don't have the same conviction that he's gonna have a 20-point day that I do that potentially some of these other cheap options that we still have could at wide receiver. So I'd rather go safe at the tight end.
Yeah, I agree. I think we go Mark Andrews and probably find some cheap guy. I'm pulling up this stat right. I'm pulling up the stat right here. I just want to see if this is true. Yeah, okay. Besides guess who is this is a receiver at 4,400, played in 82% of the snaps. I think could be another solid cheap play going up against the Jets defense is Donovan Peoples-Jones. If you want to go another cheap play, you could do that. Garrett Wilson is right there as well. Devin Duvernay was targeted a solid amount. There's some solid guys in this 4,400 range. Kadarius Toney at 4,200 could be okay. Jahan Dotson's still there. So I like going Mark Andrews here and then going someone cheap. You could probably go even cheaper than that, but I think there are some solid cheap options that we didn't really talk about too much.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jahan Dotson is going to be crazy owned. Recency bias and the fact that he's still only at 4,200, and then Kadarius Toney only had 1 touch, and I think it was a carry. So those scare me, but
we go Jahan Dotson and then DJ Moore. I mean, I don't know.
Oh, I'd go Robbie Anderson over DJ Moore, I think, at 5,300.
Yeah, but I mean, if you have the money,
Christian Kirk. I mean, I don't know.
So what if I put? Let's say I put where is he? Jahan Dotson, 4,200. That means we have 5,700 remaining, and you could go DJ Moore right there.
I mean, I honestly really like DJ Moore. I think he's just such a talented guy that it'll rise above whatever potential Baker Mayfield still has left in his arm. But I think that Robbie Anderson, he's a nice value play, but I just won't have him in any of my lineups just because I don't really like Robbie Anderson as a player, and I don't see him having a better week than last week at all, or just even close. So that's just me. But I mean, you forget that they were playing the Browns and they were losing big, and it was just peppering Robbie Anderson with targets. I don't know if I necessarily see that.
I actually could. I completely agree with you on that. Actually, I think I would go DJ Moore over Robbie Anderson. He's the better wide receiver overall. I know he had a better week, but still, I'd probably go DJ Moore. So I'd be down for a Jahan Dot. I'd also be down to go even lower. If you want Dortch and Rondale Moore, I don't know what is Rondale Moore's status.
I don't know. He didn't play.
Yeah, I know he didn't play. Is he? Let me look. Rondale Moore injury. I feel like if Rondale,
Yeah, while you're looking at that, I mean, the other guys
Rondell Moore is likely to practice on Wednesday, so I would avoid Dortch.
The other guys I had, I mean, again, like I mentioned, Curtis Samuel, Chase Claypool. I like guys who got, I mean, obviously Chris Olave, you could just happen to bet on a touchdown falling out of the sky. Same with Donovan Peoples-Jones, Garrett Wilson. I think we don't need to dip into that 3,000s category where it really is a true Hail Mary. I think we can go solid. And I mean, even Zay Jones, I think had like 9 targets. If you like that over like having to spend up for Christian Kirk. So I mean, I think there's definitely plays here that make sense.
Yeah, I think right now I'm kind of sold on going Jahan Dotson at 4,200. We haven't gone too chalky yet, so I would go Dotson at 4,200 and then use the 5,700 on DJ Moore. That's where I'm at. Okay, are you cool with that, Jake?
Yep, absolutely.
Perfect. All right, we'll add DJ Moore to this lineup and go over this lineup one more time. So Jake will put this in. I'll text you it obviously after, but Tua, James Conner, Leonard Fournette, Tyreek Hill, Jahan Dotson, DJ Moore, Mark Andrews, Chase Edmonds as our flex, and the Jets defense. And to end the stream, how about everyone go through their lineup, say it one more time, and then we'll close it out. Julian.
Yeah, wait. I'm curious. Just out of curiosity, how much more money would we have if it was Goff and DJ Chark instead of Tua and DJ Moore?
In Chark?
Yeah, I upgrading at Fournette. I would be curious.
800 more. So you could get a pretty solid upgrade. You could go, the highest you could go to would be you can get Kamara, Barkley, Mixon, Chubb, all those guys.
I kind of like if you substitute that for Barkley. I mean, do you guys like that more? I'm just playing off some ideas.
Yeah.
I kind of like the old lineup a bit better. You go Tua. Because what's the point of having Tyreek and Edmonds then? Then I think you have to like redo that all. And so I personally like Tua a bit more. And I'm still fine with Fournette.
Very valid.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So we'll do just that. And let me put in, who was it? DJ Moore. Yeah, that's the lineup right there. How about Julian? You go through your lineup. Jake, go through it. I'll go through mine, and then we'll close it.
Yeah. So I'm not super set on my lineup. Like I have like ideas, and I think I'm going Goff, Amon-Ra, Terry McLaurin, TJ Hawkinson as my main stack for this upcoming. I know that's something that I really want to do, and I'm playing around a lot, and I think I'm going to go with James Conner in it as well. And I think that's one that's good. I want to put in Saquon because I think that he has a good week, and he's going to be really high owned, but I think I can handle that because I have Goff and because I have James Conner. And so I'm still fiddling around with who else I could put in, but that's basically my main core. And then I can add in as the week goes on, just fidget with it a little bit.
Yeah, I've been tinkering with mine all day, kind of figuring out the possibilities and what feels right with the highest upside possibilities. And it does look very similar to the one that we just put together. Because I do have that Miami Baltimore stack. So I have Tua with James Conner and Joe Mixon at running back. I went pretty high and guys who I think have chance for 20, 30-point weeks easily. And then at wide receiver, I went Tyreek Hill with Tua, and then cheaped out. I went Chase Claypool just because I think he's going to get a lot of touches, and he does have that upside with getting a lot of red zone looks. And then Curtis Samuel. He went crazy last week. He's going to have 20-25% ownership, but I'm just going to eat it. It's 4,600 for a guy who is just a lot more valuable than everyone right next to him at this moment. And then Andrews at tight end, Edmonds at flex, and the Bengals defense. I have 100 remaining salary, and I was trying to find out a way to get to that Cardinals defense, but I felt like the sacrifice going 100 down on any other player is just doing my lineup injustice for a unnecessary defensive switch.
Mhm. Yeah. I went a lot different than these guys, and we'll see how this goes. But Russell Wilson, Javonte Williams, Najee Harris, Michael Pittman, Deontay Johnson, Christian Kirk, Alberto, Brandon Cooks in the flex, and the Bengals defense. So same defense, very different guys.
Wait. You went Russell Wilson with Javonte Williams?
Yes, I did.
Aren't you worried that's a negative point?
That is an expensive quarterback running back stack.
I mean, it's not like
you know what? I will if Javonte is going to get as many targets as he did last week, which I think could very much happen. I'll take it.
I mean,
if Javonte Williams gets
you think he's going to average double-digit targets? And I mean, I don't know. It's just I worry that they're just going to run the ball, and half of it's going to go to Melvin, and half of it's going to go to Javonte, and it's just not going to work. Look, I don't know. I can't predict the future. Maybe you're right, but it's just an interesting way to look at it to go to Javonte. Yeah, maybe he does get 12 targets again, and he gets a couple receiving touchdowns, and you come back and make me look like an idiot, but I don't know.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to see what happens, but yeah. Anyways, that's going to do it for week 2 of the DFS Dudes. Thank you all so much for tuning in. And Jake, take us away with the outro.
Yeah, there are many things a man can do with his time, and this is better than those things. Thanks for watching.
Yes, sir. See you guys.